Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukampadhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tamarama Krishnam Sirshanamam. Namaste everyone and welcome to our study of the Bhagavad Gita. We are studying chapter 13 and we are around verse 7 or something. Before I continue, let me just mention that on our website, we have put all these classes in a course form, so it's much easier for you to access them. If you go to our website, go to the main page, scroll down, and you'll see Vedanta courses. Bhagavad Gita is listed there, and it will open into a course and have that experience. We'll make it, so all the videos are there right now. We'll try to put the content and make it a bit more interactive. It's good for those who come later on, they find the whole courses, all the lessons in one place. And you can give your feedback. Okay, so let me share the screen. And this is where we are on my tablet. So we were looking at verse. We completed verse 7 last time. Anyone out there?
13.8, Swamiji. 13.8.
13.8 today, is it? No, we completed 13.8.
No, last week we finished that.
Yeah, okay. Let's start with 13.9. This verse is Asaktir anabhisvanga putra dara griha adishu nityam cha samachittatvam ishta anishta upapattishu. That is the Sanskrit pronunciation, but broken down. When it's chanted together, it will sound like Asaktir anabhisvanga putra dara grihadishu nityam cha samachittatvam ishta anishta upapattishu. The word-to-word meaning is, let's run through that. Asakti, being without attachment. So the mind, we discussed how the mind functions. There's a knower, there's an object that is known. When you pay attention to something, that object is caught in your mind view. And if it's interesting, that attention remains arrested on that. And if it's very interesting, then the mind wants to go back to them. It leaves an impression on the mind, and those impressions bubble up even when the object is not there in front of you, brings the memory of that pleasant experience, and it may create a desire to have that particular object of experience again. So that is how attachment forms. And when you want to repeatedly, when you have a particular experience, it keeps on deepening the impression. So the mind is, can you imagine it like to be a soft clay, and you make a run, and then you have the same experience again. It leaves that impression becomes deeper and deeper. That's why when a student is learning, we ask them to memorize it, repeat it until that leaves such a deep impression that that impression is even naturally it will come to the surface of the conscious mind. So that's how when that impression is deeply imprinted in the chitta, the mind, that has a tendency to bubble up to the conscious mind even without our much control. And then that's how we are caught into it. So we become attached to it, and even we remember that particular experience, it brings back the good feeling, the joy, the pleasure that was, and vice versa. If the experience was something very painful, it happened again and again and again. And that a good example would be some traumatic experience happens in a person's life again and again. and it leaves a deep impression there. And so thereafter, it leaves what you might say a scar on the mind, and that makes that person suffer or bring that painful experience back every time that impression surfaces to the conscious mind. So this is the psychology behind it. And if you wanted to help somebody overcome some traumatic experience, then this will give some insight about how you could go and maybe change that. Unless you change those impressions that are there, you will not be able to help that person, no matter how much of counseling and all those things we might do. We can come back to the subject of attachment and non-attachment, because that is one of the central ideas in the Bhagavad Gita, which Sri Krishna teaches Arjuna about non-attachment to the fruits of actions. And so, asaktir anabhisvanga, absence of fondness with regards to what? Putra, dara, griha, adishu. So, etc. Normally, a person, a family person, would be very much attached to their husband or wife, children, house, car, property, money, name, fame, power, position. All those various objects are there out, to which the mind gets strongly attached because of repeated engagement throughout the day, throughout life, with those things around. And that's how the hot air balloon gets tied to the ground, and when it tries to rise up, then various things hold it down. So the discipline is, if you want to elevate the mind to the highest level so that it is experiences that oneness in its own self, that with the highest consciousness, self-knowledge, then the mind has to be raised, and it cannot be at two levels at the same time. You can't be on the ground floor and you can't be on the 7th floor at the same time. If you want to go to the higher plane, higher floors, one has to detach from the lower ones. Detachment here doesn't mean it's a mental detachment. It's a mental detachment, and there's a method behind it. It doesn't mean that in a very brute force way we do violence to our own emotions and mind by forcefully extracting it and taking it up there, while it still has a deep desire for that same experience again. So if you do that, for example, somebody feels an urge of a sense of renunciation or something, he leaves, something has happened and he goes to another place. I'm going to the Himalayas and meditate there. Well, he goes there, but his mind will still be attached to all those experiences and things which he had in the village at home. Physically, he might have transported himself to another place, but the mind is still attached to those things. So we will talk about how Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda teach us a very simple, practical way where we can still be in the world doing various things, yet mentally be detached. But that detachment is very, very important. Sri Ramakrishna in the gospel, we see many times he says, this renunciation or non-attachment is imperative. You can't have a spiritual growth or progress without that. For the monk, he has to renounce both materially, physically, and mentally. For the householder, they have to only renounce mentally, not physically, because they still have to discharge their responsibilities and duties. And therefore, it's not very, very easy when you're in the midst of all these things all the time. Asaktir anabhisvanga, putra dara grihadishu. Adishu means you can put anything else to which the mind is attached, etc. And nityam cha samachittatvam. Nityam means constantly, always. Samachittatvam, equanimity. This is a great teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. Samatvam yogam uchyate. Earlier chapter 2, Sri Krishna says, maintaining that balance, equanimity, that poise, not to swing with the pendulum left and right, so to say. When the world is whirling around with you at tremendous pace and you can't stop it, how do you maintain that poise and that balance and then not get pulled away sucked into the whirlpool of the world. So if one is attached to it, then it will pull you out. If you are mentally detached from it, you can be a witness, watch things happening around, and yet maintain that observer or witness nature. That is called Shakshi Bhava, being a witness, a detached witness to everything around. And that comes through practice. But it has to be constantly practiced. Otherwise, in a difficult situation, then you say it's so difficult. Of course, it will be difficult unless one has trained oneself in that way. So to zoom out of our everyday things, everyday events in which we are so much engrossed in the world. So that is why Sri Ramakrishna again and again says one must go into solitude, zoom out, detach from things that are happening around you, and take a global view of life, not only today, this week, this month, this year, then span it and scan it from birth to death, and then life after life. What's all this happening? And as you zoom out, go higher and higher and higher, you will find that naturally all those things were so amplified and made so big in our everyday life, automatically become reduced in your perspective. For example, if somebody is on the ground floor, on the ground, and he looks around, he sees some big trees around him, some shrubs and some grass. And if he gets onto a hot air balloon, or is watching the whole thing, nowadays we can say through a drone, you can have that experience. And as he goes higher and higher, he finds that the trees become smaller and smaller, but his range of view expands, and now he can see, maybe the whole suburb. If he goes higher, he sees the whole city. But at a certain height, when he looks down to that same place where he was looking before, hardly a difference would be noticed between the tree and the shrub and the grass. Everything becomes merged into that sameness. So samachittatvam, how do we maintain or attain that samachittatvam? The method is just like this drone goes high up, and from that position, everything appears to be identical or same. Likewise, the capacity of the mind to zoom out, and then you automatically will find that whatever might have been troubling you, something very big, so important, and constantly worrying you, everything, you'll find that all that gets reduced to that oneness or sameness. And maintaining that, always constantly maintaining that equanimity, equilibrium. I'll come back to that a little later in more detail, but that is another practice to be done. Nityam cha samachittatvam. Sama means same, chitta means mind. With regard to upapattishu, whatever is attained, ishta, what is desirable, anishta, and that which is undesirable also. So this is the practice that prepares the mind for that realization. It's all about training the mind. And as you reflect internally, become more observant of the states of mind, the workings of the mind, then you'll discover that there's so many little things that are holding the mind from rising higher. The natural tendency of the mind is to go high, but various entanglements or engagements or attachments to the things at the material physical level hold it down. Sri Ramakrishna gives a beautiful example of in India. This is what they do. Let me just grab that. Yeah. So if there's a fishing pond and there's an embankment, so what are there? The people, when they want to fish, they get a long bamboo stick which is flexible. They stick it on the ground here, and from there they will tie a fishing line with a hook in there, and then they will bend it so it becomes something like this, and then they will, with the trigger or something, they will hook it there. So the bamboo is now sort of bent in a curved shape, and when the fish grabs hold of it, this trigger is released, and the bamboo stick bounces back and straightens up, and the fish gets hooked in there. So Sri Ramakrishna gives this example that the natural tendency of the mind is to go up. But that particular attachment, things to which we are attracted externally, is what is holding us down. And the moment that is released, the mind regains its upright nature. What is holding it down? These are the things that are at the grosser plane. Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, three categories are there. The tamasic and rajasic activities hold it down when sattva becomes predominant, and that's when, through japa and meditation, the mind is purified. Then the mind becomes automatically detached, easily detached from the gross entanglements of life. That's the whole purpose of sadhana is there. So non-attachment and absence of fondness regarding son, wife, house, etc. Anything, it could be there. It could be, these are physical things, it could be non-material things like money, or it could be just some position one is holding and got tremendous attachment to that, fame and all that. So these, anything that is pegging the mind at the ground, physical world, is a hindrance in the spiritual journey. And constant equanimity of the mind with regard to the attainment of desirable and the undesirable things in this world. So in life, you are constantly working towards something. Every action has got a desired goal. And naturally, normally, when that particular desire is fulfilled, then one is happy. And when it is not fulfilled, then one is sad. And you'll find that we oscillate between these two, because not everything is successful all the time. Every attempt to attain something doesn't always become successful. So, whether it's passing an examination, getting a promotion, or getting a job, small things are there all the time where if there's success, we are happy. If there is failure, we lose, we're not so happy. And the mind swings between these two. What is the discipline? The discipline is to maintain that balance when both these possibilities present them to you. There's a beautiful poem by Rudyard Kipling. It's called If. If you have got that book, Vivekananda Power Capsules, I liked it so much that I have put it at the back. And you'll find in that poem, there's a wonderful ideas of the Bhagavad Gita are beautifully put there. This, I'm just reminded, this idea is also very nicely put there. So, Nityam cha samachitvam, samachittatvam, Ishta anishta upapattishu. This maintaining that balance. Sometimes people say it is easier, or they feel that if they're not in this whirlwind of this world, in the midst of various responsibilities and duties, and if they're in some quiet place like, oh, Swamiji, if I can go into the Himalayas or some place like that and sit down there, it'll be much easier for me to maintain that detached balance. But really, it's even harder there. So I'll give an example of what does this mean. Having a balance or stability means to be able to maintain that particular position. Now, many of you have done bicycling. So when the bicycle is perfectly stationary and you sit on the seat and say, can you maintain your position? Just without any movement backward and forward, try to maintain that balance. So that is called static balance, static equilibrium. You are not moving, but trying to maintain balance. And another person has said, okay, you can cycle around and try to maintain the balance. And of course, our experience is that when the bicycle is moving, then it's easier to maintain that balance. Even if you are going around a bend and all those things, the ground is uneven, it is able to maintain that balance. But when you are perfectly still, you find it's more difficult. So one of them is called static equilibrium. The other one is called dynamic equilibrium. The dynamic equilibrium is easier than the static equilibrium. Or you might have seen this, the top, when children, that triangular type of thing is there that we spin, tie a rope around that, string around that, and then throw it out, and it begins to spin. So when it's spinning, you'll see that for so long it's spinning fast, it's maintaining that vertical position. But when that momentum, angular momentum stops, then it topples over. So likewise, you'll find that it's sometimes easier to maintain the balance of the mind in the whirlpool in the midst of these various activities. But when you try to go actually in a very quiet place without any external support, and the mind hasn't been properly trained, then it either sinks down to a very tamasic state, and you say, oh, that was a long time went. I think I was in a very deep meditation, I dozed off or something like that. Also, people will say, but they feel that was like what you call a good meditation. Mind was calm and quiet. Sometimes people come and say, oh, I had a long meditation. It was very good. I felt afterwards, I felt very good when I came out of it. But I do not know what happened in that period of half an hour, 45 minutes. Technically, in the Sanskrit, in the language of the scriptures, it's called laya. Actually, the mind, instead of going higher to a higher sattvic plane, it had gone down to more of a tamasic state. And in that tamasic state, that alertness of mind was not there. That's why we will say some time sort of passed. But in a good meditation, when there's a good concentration and the mind goes up, the degree of alertness would be very, very high. It will be higher than simply not knowing how time went by. And you will be very vigilant and awake and alert and watchful of the happenings of the mind. That is the type of experience we are aiming for during meditation. So the idea is, the method is that you maintain that samachittatva. How is to be done that? We go back to our idea of the understanding of the mind. And we had said that the mind has got many layers. Okay. There is, the whole thing is called chitta, which is the mind stuff, in which signals are coming from outside or even from our memories, let us say, and it's creating some disturbance. That is called a chitta vritti, a thought, a wave, a modification, and this is called vritti. And so manas is that state when the observer, which is looking from the top, which is the buddhi, intellect, and its source is consciousness. So that light is shining from top. It's observing. Manas is a state where it has not been able to understand or come to a conclusion what is that vritti representing. So it's like you're looking at somebody, say, who is that person? I'm looking, the features are not very clear because he's at some distance. That state of indecisiveness is called manas. And the moment you have been able to identify that and come to a conclusion and say, that is Ram or somebody like that, that is called, that is where the buddhi steps in and makes that decision, and clarity comes on in there. So in all our practices during meditation at that time, the best friend that we are trying to awaken in is this buddhi. And it is when that buddhi is able to separate itself from all these activities there and say, I'm the witness, I'm watching what is happening in my mind space. I'm observing what is happening in my mind space. I can see certain ideas are coming from the subconscious mind, and I'm aware that they were deposited there through some experience, some learning or something, and then something is feeding into me. I'm speaking to somebody, okay, and or seeing something, but I am separate from this. I'm an observer of this. That observership is what we try to intensify or exercise and develop and strengthen during the time of meditation in the early stages of the mind. So that's why when we teach the meditation technique, after say sit down quietly, let there be no disturbance from outside, get into a beautiful rhythm, because the mind and the breath are interrelated. Pray for everyone and wish them well and all that, so that they don't come and disturb you during hour of meditation. And that's just preparation of it. Then comes the real part of where you give one thought and one form to your mind and say, let this be the one anchor. And that can be anything, but typically it should be something that is very uplifting and nobling, something divine. And in our case, it will be some aspect of the divine, which is a chosen ideal. And that behind that form, nama, behind that root, would be a name, which is the mantra, which is the energy representing that particular form. And so what we do is we try to keep the mind in that same loop of the repetition of the mantra. And the mantra, of course, is not simply any word and every word. It is a living, dynamic, spiritual energy. And when we are resonating with it, pulsating with it, feeling that energy is now becoming more and more vibrant and stronger, and it is unfolding from within. That's why we use the symbol of the lotus. And lotus within its bud contains all the beautiful petals. And as it opens up, that beautiful shape of the flower comes out with fragrance and everything. So that divine energy that is within us is embedded, is deep inside us, but it needs some catalyst, some exercising, which is the sadhana. The catalyst is your mantra, and given by the spiritual teacher. And then you have to work on that, and by japa, tad japa tadartha bhavanam, repeat the mantra and have the feeling or the understanding what it represents. Artha bhavanam, or the form that it represents, or the being that it represents, or the qualities of the being that it represents. So somehow you have to keep the mind engaged in that loop of it. So when that is the activity happening in the chitta, so the wave is going. So if you say that is the if you say this is the mind space, and you have watching what is happening in the mind space. So your mantra starts Om and then runs through. And then at the tail end, that's where the danger position is there, situation is there. At that point, the tendency is there for it to fly off in some other direction. We try to grab hold of it and put it in that same loop like that. So it goes. And to do that, this part, another part of the mind, which is the buddhi, who is watching the whole thing, vigilantly with great attention and not sort of getting distracted to anything outside, is following that process and makes sure that the mind remains in that loop. In between now and then it will fly off, but if you are vigilant, you can grab hold it from where and then bring it back into that loop. And this wrestling with the mind is what everyone has to go through. There's no other way. Sometimes people, when they try to meditate and they become really aware how distracted the mind is, they said, oh, this is too much. And mind seems to be more distracted than in other times. No, it is so much distracted, but now just because you're watching it, now you have become aware of its degree of distraction. And abandoning the process is not going to help. It's not going to the gymnasium after a few days and saying it's so very painful, I'm not going to go. That's not going to bring out the energy, the strength that is within us. Likewise, this constant battle is to be there. And then you understand it's not something that you just do it for 5 minutes and 10 minutes and expect to have some tremendous mastery over the mind. If you're serious about it, one will put some solid time in a disciplined way. So when you sit down and say, I'm not going to get up for half an hour, no matter where the mind goes, I'm going to wrestle with this. And then some days you'll have good meditation. Some days the mind is not cooperative. It does not matter. That battle has to go. So that perseverance is the important quality in the life of a spiritual aspirant. And slowly that same mind becomes, the buddhi becomes more and more strengthened. So what happens is, as you keep on exercising that, this buddhi becomes more and more strengthened. We have seen in the Kathopanishad, the example is given of a chariot. So it's a chariot there. So let us say it's a modern day chariot with some wheels up there, and it is yoked to some horses. There's a fancy horse there. 5 horses are there, and then the horses are galloping along the road, which are the sense objects. There are 2 people on the chariot. One is the Sarathi, the charioteer, and the other one is the Jivatma, which is the rider. And this is the chariot is going through. Those horses are held together by these ropes. So in this example, this is the body, the chariot. The horses are the 5 senses. This is the mind. The ropes are the mind. That is the buddhi. And this is the jiva. And if the buddhi is alert, not drunk or sleeping, and is holding the ropes tightly, then the horses are under control. But we might have a beautiful chariot with the body, strong senses in the horses, but if the buddhi is not there, or is not functioning as it should, as a good friend, then the jiva is at the mercy of these horses, wherever they take him to be. So the most important person here to be friend is this buddhi, which in the Mahabharata situation, in the picture you see is Sri Krishna. He is the guide that will direct us, control the horses, and put them to the path of spiritual. So this is the buddhi. Its origin is from the consciousness. That's where it's coming from. And that light is watching there. So it's not only at the time of meditation that you should be watchful. That is where, in a very specific way, in a controlled environment, removing all the distractions and all that, we try to give that exercise to the buddhi. No matter what, morning and evening, in a disciplined way, with the help of the mantra, mala, you want to say, I'm going to repeat this mantra, 10 malas or something like that. Or I'm going to set up a time and I'm not going to get up for half an hour, no matter where the mind is going, but some disciplining is necessary. And then you watch the flow of the mind, and you'll find that it will begin to feel that it is not the mind, but is an observer of the mind. So they'll begin to form a layer between that. And that's a wonderful thing, because when you can observe your internal thoughts, ideas, and all those things as something different from us, as something separate from us, then only we can bring about that non-attachment. But if it's totally entangled and we think we are the mind, then how can you separate something that is with which you have totally identified yourself? If you say, I'm wearing the clothes and the clothes are not me, then I can take the clothes off. But if you think the clothes are like the skin, that it's very much part of me, then I can't unskin myself. That is how the buddhi has become attached to the mind, so to say. So first is that process of developing this buddhi. Once that buddhi becomes sharper, it's a very, very powerful tool, and the degree of actually that development of the buddhi is what makes a difference between people and people. In those where that buddhi is very strongly developed, we call them buddhiman, sharp, intelligent. They can pick up ideas very quickly. And where it is not, then we say they're dull. And you can read the same paragraph 5 times and still not get the idea what is there. So rather than thrusting that information into the mind again and again, the intelligent way is to develop that buddhi, control that buddhi, and through the willpower behind it. And then everything becomes very, very easy. So this was a little bit of discussion about the practice of it, because you will say, okay, all this is very nice, but the condition of my mind is that, look, it's so attached to so many things, and I can't even take it off one of them. What is the method? So this is sort of like goal setting. Do this, do this, do this. But more important than that is, how do we do that? That is, I have been trying to explain here a little bit about the nature of the mind and its functioning, where the energy comes from, where the flow of that energy is there. We'll keep on coming to this again and again, this idea, and amplify that, but reflect on them. Before you start your meditation, take a sort of a view. This is the condition of my mind before it. Then you go through that meditation or repeat that mantra so many times in a very calm way. You'll find that when the degree of concentration becomes better, as it increases, you will see that the number of thoughts that are coming your mind into your mind space becomes less and less and less, fewer and fewer and fewer. And ideally is that you have only one thought. So that is called ekagramana. So in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, right in the beginning, Bhagavan Vyasa, when he writes a commentary, he says there are 5 types of minds, depending, and the criteria is how focused or how distracted they are. And the worst or the lowest one is called Shipta. It's a very, very distracted mind and very dull mind. Too much tamas is there. If you want to ask him to concentrate on something, even if he tries, he's not able to bring his mind to that point. So this is a very, very primitive mind, or very low degree of manifestation is there. Then is the mudha. This is a deluded mind, totally, we might say, infatuated with something. So has become totally attracted and engrossed with something. It could be money, it could be some person, it could be running after some power. And it is so much caught into it that if you want to pull it out, it's not going to move out of it at all. So that is not also conducive to meditation. These two, if one is in this category, forget about talking meditation, that person. The ideas will go over the head, that's all. Then comes the vikshipta. Vikshipta means a distracted mind. Distracted means there are moments of concentration and moments of break of concentration. So if you ask that person, hey, pay attention here, a student to pay attention to what the teacher is saying, for a while, that student will be able to hold it there. And next thing is looking out, or is daydreaming, or think of something else. Then he brings it there. The moments, durations of concentration, durations of break of concentration. Now that is a good starting point. You can do something with that mind because it has some degree of concentration. The next level that you want to take that mind is called ekagramana. Ekagra, one pointed. Eka means one. So this is what we are trying to do in this process of meditation. Ekagramana. We have given one thought, one idea, and asking it to direct its attention. That attention idea we'll talk again in a little bit, because that is where it's like your searchlight. In a dark night, in a prison, the prison guard in the top of the tower has got a searchlight, a strong beam, and he moves it around. Wherever he points, that particular object becomes illuminated. So in our mind, there is something called an attention. It can be a bit spread out, so it's very wide, or it can be very sharp and very intense. When it's sharp and intense, it can go a bit further. When its light is too spread out, then that penetration into the dark is not to the same degree. So ekagramana means bringing those energies or mental energies into a focus, and you give something for it to hold on to, and that is your mantra and your chosen ideal. And that's where we want to sort of lock into it, so that wherever it goes, it follows that particular object. It doesn't deviate from that. That type of mind is called one-pointed mind. And the ultimate samadhi means niruddha, means a mind where there are no waves. So sometimes we come across people who said, I'm trying to practice making my mind into a vacuum, when there's no thought at all like that. We can see it's not a very intelligent way to do it, because it's, you take some space and you try to suck the air out, something else will come into there. And that is all the rubbish from the outside world. It's better to fill the mind from inside with one idea and make it bigger and bigger and bigger, and push out all the ideas so that they can come up there and they bounce back. That type of approach. So in meditation, as you concentrate on the mind, on the object of meditation, you sort of zoom into it. It's like a microscope, and suppose normally in a microscope, you go and jumping from what you call power of magnification to other, from 10 to 100 to 1,000, something like that. But imagine you had a microscope where you can, with a knob, you can gradually just zoom in. And as you would go, so let us look at that in this way. Say here, if I'm looking at a piece of cloth or something in this through a magnifying glass, then I see so many threads are there. And then when I focus onto one of them and zoom into that, then I find that thread has become very big and there are fibers and things sticking out there. And then I take a small area and zoom into that, then something else begin to appear. What is happening, that which is small here has become amplified and has now occupied the full mental space. When you pick something else, you again focus or concentrate on that particular thing becomes, fills the whole of the mental space. What happens to the other things? The other things are pushed out of your mental mind space. So that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to focus totally in the mind, so that mantra, or that form of the divine, is the only content of the mental space. That is the goal. And when it's able to lock in, dive deep into it and hold it for some time, then that is where the ekagra mind is, the one-pointed mind. But you'll see that you zoom in and then you tend to zoom out. For a while you concentrate on it, and then other things begin to, you go backwards, and other things enter into the mind, and you start thinking about your work or this or that, and they populate the mind space. So in meditation, let the buddhi be observing also what is happening in there. How many thoughts are there? It can be quite frustrating because we haven't trained the mind so well until now. It has got a free rein doing whatever it has wanted, and suddenly we understand now that, we have to develop this wonderful concentration. But all the samskaras and the past habits and the tendency of the mind to constantly run outside, and all the entertainment that we had been giving to the various experiences, and harboring them, letting them come in. The doors are open, come in all the time. Now suddenly we are trying to shut the gates and the doors and say, hey, thoughts, don't come inside there, don't disturb me in there. Well, those were your very wonderful invited guests, and suddenly they will break the door and come in, because you have been so nice to them all these days. So we have to be very, very strict with ourselves and say, leave me alone. All right. What's the time like? We'll do a just quick introduction, but for 5 minutes to the next verse, and then we'll go have some discussion. So now comes the next verse. This is still part of that jnana part of it. Remember, in the beginning, Sri Krishna talked about what is Kshetra. Then before going to the Kshetrajna, he said, I will talk about what is knowledge, in the sense that this will lead to that knowledge of the Kshetrajna. Maicha ananya yogena bhakti abhicharini Vivikta Desha Sevitvam Arati Jana Samsadi. So cha means end. So this is continuing from the various other things that were listed, practices that were listed before. Avyabhivicharani, unwavering. Charani means that is moving, which is not moving. That means the mind is now, the candle is not flickering because there's no wind there. The mind is holding on to the idea, it's not jumping from one idea to the other idea. Okay, that type of steadiness, some degree of steadiness we have been able to bring by constant practicing of this inward watchfulness, mindfulness type of thing, alertness, internal alertness of with the buddhi. So my means to me with a capital M. That means the divine essence that is behind, which is the source of that consciousness that we are. Okay, bhakti. So Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhakti Avicharani, through devotion, Ananya Yogena, single-minded concentration. Okay, this is the type of, by this time, the mind has been developed to be, the degree of concentration and control has been developed to detach the mind from the outside things, outside senses, memories and all those things. They also have been silenced there. They practiced the japa and meditation of the divine form for so long and have been able to lock our attention onto that for a sustained period of time. And of course, we feel that wonderful calmness that is coming. The energy is not getting dissipated out, lost out into through the senses. That energy is getting harnessed, and actually there's an awakening. The lotus is unfolding. You will naturally feel a sense of great peace within. You will feel a sense of great serenity and tranquility within. The mind becomes, on the mind space becomes very luminous, because there are not too many other thoughts constantly trying to come in like shadows and obstructing that light. So all those wonderful attributes of the Atman begin to unfold themselves in that mind space. And Sri Krishna then says, okay, what has to be done is, so there are various layers. One is this external world out here impinging into us. Okay, and this is the senses. That there is this mind space where we've been discussing all these thoughts and ideas are coming. There is this buddhi, which is the watchman that looks down there. Now, in this particular verse, Sri Krishna says, hey, look, that source of that light behind that buddhi is me. Me means the divine, the Atman, Paramatman. So because Sri Krishna is not trying to say, identify himself as the son of Vasudeva. Here it means our inner controller, Paramatman. It is his light of intelligence that was shining through, awakening and making the buddhi awake, enlightening this content of the mind's ideas, making the senses active, so eyes can see, ears can hear, and engaging with the things of the world. That is the flow of the energy. What we have done is, we have tried to cut off the external world. We have silenced the senses. We have limited all the thoughts to one, confined it to one singular thought, and some degree of concentration and of the buddhi, or the control of the buddhi has awakened. The buddhi is sharper, stronger, more watchful. At that moment, we turn that buddhi around. So that energy that was flowing there, it's not flowing out anymore, and it has been harnessed in the mind space. But what we do is, we use this buddhi as a reflector. It's a reflector. And so in that mirror of that buddhi, we see something and we try to see what is the source of that reflection. So when you look at yourself in a mirror and you see yourself, if you move away from the front of the mirror, that image disappears. So that source, the main object, or you can't say the object here, the main subject of which the reflection in the mirror is the object, we are using that mirror to become aware of ourselves now. And that is where Sri Krishna is saying, let that light bounce back to discover the source of that consciousness. So, Mai cha ananya yogena bhakti abhicharini, this is the practice. This is the higher level of japa and meditation. So that is where the self-discovery will happen, self-knowledge will happen. But the mind has, the mirror of the buddhi is not covered with the dust of the mental thoughts and ideas and things coming from the material world. The energy is not getting dissipated out into the external world, and the mind space has been calmed. That mind becomes, that buddhi becomes a very good reflector. And in that reflection, one gets a glimpse and a feel of what or who we really are. And if one practices very intensely and deeply, then that internal instrument, antakarana, has become a very good tool for that process of self-discovery. So, Maicha Ananya Yogena Bhakti Avibhicharani, because it has to be done not in a very detached, cold way, mechanical way, with great devotion, with great love and affection, and then the mind will naturally go to that. If you try to forcefully direct your mind to something, then it will go there and hold for a while, but then it will run off. But if there's something that you are very fine, you love, you're devoted to, you have great respect and reverence for, you enjoy its company, then so much effort is not necessary. The mind will go there, enjoy the good company, and not want to leave that place also. So how do we develop that relationship and that company, spiritual company with our own chosen ideal in our own heart? First, we have to bring him there, welcome him, create a conducive space, give all the love and attention that the divine deserves. And then there's an interaction between the jiva and the divine, to the extent that you will enjoy that wonderful company of the divine. And then you really don't have to struggle so much. Naturally, the mind will go towards that. Just like it goes towards somebody outside in this world whom you love very much. You don't have to go and tell them, think about that person. Automatically it will go. In the same way, instead of some body or something outside, we have given the mind something far much more superior, who is our own higher self only, and as the object or the company, the spiritual company in our own hearts, and say, cultivate that company, company of that divine in our own hearts. So that is the path of devotion. Maicha ananya yogena bhakti vicharani vivikta desha sevitvam arati jana samsadi. Vivikta desha sevitvam. Vivikta means here repair to some solitary and clean place. Sevitvam. Go into solitude. Desh means some place. Arati, rati means to be happy. Arati means not to be very happy, not to rejoice. What is that? Jana samsadi. Company of people, crowd of people. That means you have to love your own company, to be happy in your own solitude, in the company of your mind, in the company of your thoughts, in company of some scriptures or books, something. So when we cultivate that type of inner company and begin to rejoice in that, then people coming, just asking for some, having a conversation, meaningless conversation about things outside, that becomes a very painful distraction. and you will try to run away from them, avoid them, not get invited or not invite such people around there because you love your own company. Or if you need some company, then satsang, people of a similar temperament where you will discuss spiritual ideas and all that. So these are the disciplines. Vivikta Desh Sevitvam. Shri Ramakrishna would very, very strongly recommend many times that one has to go into solitude. Of the 4 disciplines, he recommends to all the devotees who would ask the question, what is the way? How do I realize God? First, he would say, develop a very strong sense of discrimination between the real and the unreal, permanent and the impermanent. Second, he said, spiritual company, satsang. Third, he says, have relish this idea or this practice of remembrance of God or repeating the mantra. And so you enjoy that. And the fourth one, he says, now and then go into solitude. 1 week, 3 days, even 1 day. But one must go out of the surroundings because they all are holding the mind down. And he gives some definite ideas what you do there when you are in such a space to detach your mind. So these are called jnana. I think here it says a little bit more is there. We'll take that up in the next week. Maicha ananya yogena bhakti abhicharini vivikta desha sevitvam arati jana samsadi. So many disciplines to practice, but you will see that they're all directed to the same goal in different stages, trying to wean the mind away from the attractions of the world, restrain the outgoing senses, energy flowing out through the senses, becoming more and more observant of what's happening in the mental space by sharpening the buddhi or the internal watchman, so to say, and then giving that one particular object, because you want that ekagramana, one-pointed mind. And our spiritual rishis said, just don't take anything and everything. They're very potent, spiritually potent mantras that can help cleansing the mind, the mental space. So that's what happens when you get the mantra diksha, and then you practice your japa and meditation. And what happens that in internal cleansing of the mind, the dust that has settled on the buddhi, like the dust that has settled on the mirror, that becomes cleansed. And in that clean mirror, one begins to see a clearer reflection of something. And that something is our own true nature, the Atman. But if the dust is not removed, then we see some ghostly reflection, and that is the ego comes in there. It thinks, the ego doesn't say there's something behind me. He says, I am the boss. I am the buddhi, I am the mind, I am the body, I am the enjoyer. There's nothing behind me. That is the ghost that has possessed all of us. So how to free ourselves for that internal purification is the process. And all this is called Chitta Shuddhi. Purification. Japa, meditation, karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, dhyan yoga, all these are for that one singular purpose of purifying the mind space as the first step. Then that mind becomes conducive to go to the next stage in the spiritual journey. I think we'll stop the discussions here today. It's almost time also. Let me say these. Nam mantra. What happened to the control? Om asato ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om shanti shanti shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.